Seven habits of successful dev leads. So we need to get some vocabulary down first. Risk is any situation that would drive a negative outcome for the project. Almost anything can be a risk. The lack of expertise, improper tooling, things that impact schedule, environmental availability, these are all risk items. Tempo. Tempo is the ability of a team or individual to produce a steady stream of business value at the required quality bar. So if you have a team member that produces a lot of business value, but that's offset by the fact that their code is extremely buggy or non-conformant, you don't really have a good tempo situation. As a dev lead, your job is to encourage tempo, which is to encourage craftsmanship, which is to encourage getting things done at the required bar of quality. Tempo and risk are what dev leads do. So here are the 7 habits. Again, a shout out to Stephen Covey for thinking of this as a methodology for helping us think and focus on the important things. And so we're going to go through the 7 habits, but the river that runs through all of them is a dev lead exists to manage risk and ensure tempo. Be there. It's your most important responsibility, especially for your more junior team members. You can't just give them things to do or put them in a corner and give them scut work. There's an obligation you have as a lead to grow the capability of people in your team. So teach some things. And that goes all the way up the line as you have a bigger and bigger headcount, or you have an increased role along the technical continuum, from small A architect to big A architect to EA architect. Teach people things, lessons that you've learned, maybe the hard way, and be there to mentor your team. When a team member comes to you and says, I need help, there are only 3 responses you can have. Sure, let's take a look. That's the best one. Or, geez, I'm about to go into a meeting, or I have this thing. I will come and look for you as soon as I can. And third, I don't have time to help you right now, but I know what you're working on, and Susan would be a great person to ask about that. Being a team lead doesn't mean you have to solve all the problems yourself, but it does mean you have to make sure they get solved. And if Susan is better positioned to help Timmy out than you are, from a time availability or a knowledge availability or skills, by all means, a good team lead is going to set an expectation that team members should help each other. Document your expectations. It doesn't have to be anything big or formal, but if you have a tool like Teams, or you have a wiki, or you have some other place to centralize knowledge, just put your expectations of your team in. And that usually is part of a bigger shop standards document that says, this is what we do, this is how we do it. And if it's possible to bake in your shop standards in an automated way, by all means do that. And by all means, encourage your management to buy you tools that allow you to shift that left. In other words, if my IDE helps me and gives me corrections and suggestions and ideas while I code, I'm going to be a way better coder than if I wait for some speculative review that's way down the line, or wait for my code to go all the way to QA and then have a problem. It's called moving left, and it's something that team leads, dev leads especially, should embrace. There's lots of different ways to disseminate knowledge. Lunch and learns are great. On a lot of teams, we had this deal where every 2 weeks, the boss said he'd pay for pizza. And so we would bring in pizza, and we'd get in the big conference room with our pizza, and we would give a presentation on something. or maybe a bunch of little presentations. Maybe we'd spotlight some code that was really great and clever. Or maybe we would give a session on how to use a particular tool more effectively, or about testing techniques, or about whatever. But be there and mentor your team. And then I'm a big fan of stand-up scrum. Depending on how big your team is, you should try to keep it under 15 minutes. And you should set an expectation that they should be ready for Scrum. So if somebody asks me what my tasks are going to be, like what my Scrum status is, their expectation is that I'll be able to reel off the bullets. Yesterday I worked on this and this. I started working on that. I'm going to finish working on that today, maybe into tomorrow, and then I'm going to pick up the next thing available. I have no blockers. That's how long a status report in Scrum should be. And if I do have a blocker, then we put it on the parking lot. And then as soon as we've gone through the status for everybody, the people with problems stay, in addition to the people who might be able to help them with their problems stay. We pair people up, right? We work through their issues, and then we let them go. The less time you spend in meetings, the more time they spend coding, and that's generally a good thing. Keep them working. Always make sure that whatever your ALM tool is, and I don't care. I mean, VSTS, Azure DevOps, Jira, it doesn't matter, right? Excel, Post-it notes on a wall, just make sure there's always enough work to do. And that can be adding new business value, it can be bugs, it can be technical debt cleanup tasks. There should be an infinite amount of work available all the time. And if you're on sprints, and if you are, we should probably have a talk because you should stop doing that. Then just make sure that you have enough stories and bugs and everything else pulled into the sprint, and make sure your team knows that if they're blocked on this story and they're out of stories for the sprint, that they can go into the backlog and pull the next thing that's groomed, that's available to work. Teach them how to use feature branches and the stash feature so that they can do some task switching in a non-destructive sort of way. I love Git for this, by the way. Provide an escalation if you're not available, right? So if you're the dev lead, then some point during the project, you're going to point at someone and go, this is Susan. If I'm not available, Susan's the number 2. And if Susan and I aren't available, then I want you to go over and talk to Terry, who leads Team B, right? Use your instant messenger. Use your availability in your instant manager to tell people whether or not you're interruptible or not. If you're red, you're not interruptible, but you can't be red all day and be a good dev lead. And then, use a wiki. Wikis are cheap or free these days. So have a wiki and put your key knowledge into it that will help them stay working by allowing them to have a place where they can search for knowledge and get it. That in combination with chat and teams helping out each other as a shop standard that you set. It's okay to take time off your own tasks if you're helping Timmy, because you're creating business value by helping Timmy. So help Timmy. Force the rules, right? Do be flexible about hours of work, but if there are critical path meetings and stuff, it's important that people be there. If there are certain time of day things to make sure that you're in alignment so your teams can communicate, then do that too. And require people to use whatever your calendaring mechanism is. I tend to use Microsoft Outlook. And if you want to be effective, the entire team should all use the same tool. But if people know they're going to be out of work or in meetings, whatever, they should block their calendar. And 40-hour weeks, right? Unless you are working on a project on spec and you get a bonus for early completion and the individual team member will share in that bonus, then If you want to set realistic expectations of the business about how fast your team can produce at the required tempo, right? Business value at the required quality bar, then, you don't want to have people working uneven amounts of time. And so you don't want people to burn out. You don't want people to constantly feel like they're in a stressed out hurry mode, because when that happens, they're not going to be producing their best work. Attitude, as in you're at work, it should be good. Have a good attitude. And willingness to ask for help and general productivity are all rules that are kind of universal that you should enforce. Enforce the shop standard. So, nobody pushes straight to the main branch, right? We use feature branches, we use pull requests, we do code reviews as part of the pull request process, we use code analyzers, we use whatever tooling is available, and we'll have started our project by setting up the code in organization with the other leads and architects. So there's a template to follow. This is what our code should look like. This is how it gets organized into projects, files, folders, whatever your programming language semantics are, and document those expectations in a shop standard. They're much easier to enforce and follow up on if they're written down. And I've seen teams do it in an evolutionary way. They get to a thing and they go, okay, well, this really deserves to be a shop standard. And in the team meeting, you pull up the wiki page and you add it to the wiki. That's fair. But they expect you to enforce the shop standard. Keep in touch. I know this sounds a lot like one, but, making sure that you have the pulse of what all your team's members are up to. Are they frustrated? Are they productive? Are they the kind that just wants to be heads down and have an endless list of tasks to work on and grind out business value all day? Or are they people who are nervous or need reassurance or maybe new to a technology and maybe you need to look over their shoulder a little more? But you should know your team, and the way to do that is to keep in touch with them. Okay? So, again, your job is to manage risk and tempo. You can't do that if you don't keep in touch with your team members. Correct in private, praise in public. You don't shame people. And when your team is at fault, you say, I failed. At most, you say, we didn't hit the goals we set out to do. But you own it. You're the leader. Never be too proud to apologize for your mistakes. Hey, we got to the end of the sprint. We were going a certain direction. Man, it turns out that was not a good design choice. Thank you to Susan and Daryl for trying to work through it so bravely, but we're going to have to back that code out and redo it in a different sort of way. That's totally my bad. I apologize. Never be too proud to own your mistakes. For other people's mistakes, you own those too. Right? I screwed up. My team didn't get this XY thing done. You own it. You own it. And then if you got to go crack heads inside the team, do it in private, one-on-one. And don't be the kind of leader who takes credit for other people's work. Spotlight people who do good work or teams that do good work, like in the previous example. A little praise goes a long way. They're not dogs, okay? You don't have to keep saying that they're a good dog all the time. So when you give praise, it should be weighty. It should be for a purpose. It should mean something, and it'll mean that much more if it's not rare, but it is always meaningful. And be consistent. Remember we said before, the way to be above average is to be consistent? That's doubly true for leaders. Leaders need to be consistent. Walk the talk. If they see you do it, they'll do it, and you can hold them accountable for it. If you don't, then you lose your moral authority and you can't justify enforcing the rules, and no one will want to follow you, and your risk will go up and your tempo will go down, and you will be at the center of your team's dysfunction.